What's going on, good people? It's your boy Peacemaker back with another video. Alright, so I meant to release this yesterday, but I didn't get a chance to, so I'm going to release it now. This is my Impending Doom build that I've applied to the battle jump. Now, I will be explaining why I chose the battle jump, but I'm also going to show you some other options that you could use this build for as well. Which I understand most people, they're going to feed off the idea and they're going to tweak it a little bit, kind of make it their own style, which is cool. This is what the build is for. But let's go and get right into the build. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Oh, I messed up. First things first. Let's have a look at the basic, the basic perks of the battle jump. So the battle jump, we all know for the most part, if you've been playing for a while, it's a tank build. Now, the first perk of the battle jump is called Provoke. It says damage dealt within 200 meters range applies taunt charges. Applying taunt with this shield makes the target vulnerable to 50% increased weak point damage from all sources. Now, when we get into the weapons, I'm also going to explain that as well. But let's continue. So after you apply the taunt charges, it's also going to increase your brace strength by 150% and brace recovery by 25%. Now, I did this build prior to the most recent update as to where you can get more damage out of the taunting, but this is really me feeding off the idea from my B.K.W.R build, taking advantage of those taunt effects for the 50% damage increase to weak points. Now, the second perk of the battle jump is called Endure, which it says receives 2% less damage per attack each time incoming damage is braced. I'm explaining that with my armor as well with the Endure perk, but it also says this effect can stack up to 20% and expires if no damage is taken. No damage has been braced in the last 12 seconds. Inflicts taunt charges to hostile targets within 125 meters while bracing against hits. Alright, and if you've been watching me long enough, you already know we're going to start from the bottom, work our way to the top. So let's go ahead and get started with the armor. Alright, so my manslayer has called it quits for the night. So I previously just explained with the matter of fact, let's reinforce it. I do apologize. So the second perk of the battle junk is called Endure, which I previously read. But we're going to take 2% less damage per attack each time incoming damage is braced. And this effect can stack up to 20% and it expires if no damage has been braced in the last 12 seconds. Now, since we're going to reduce the incoming damage by 2% per hit, with us capping out at 20%, which is not bad. So my armor of choice is the, I hope I pronounce this right, the Tenasa. And the main perk of this armor is Dark Meditation. And it says while bracing, it's going to reduce the buildup of negative status effects by 10% per second. If status effects are active, its duration is reduced instead. So with the Endure perk, we're going to take 2% less damage per hit, capping out at 20%. If we're taking less damage, combine that with the Dark Meditation, you're also reducing the status effects as well. So it's kind of a win-win there with the Endure perk. And then lastly, it has Reinforce, which reduces damage taken from puncher status effects by 25%. Now, you really don't have to worry. Oh, well, I won't say don't worry about puncher status effects, but this season is really, a lot of players are really focused on poison and torpedoes this season. So puncture in a small way is going to kind of work in your favor a bit, but not really too much. But let's get into my modifications. So my first modification is resist all, which is going to increase all secondary damage resistance by 5.4%. Now that's not a whole lot, and given my damage mitigation, which if you don't know what the damage mitigation numbers are, if you look up slightly to your left where it says armor, directly below it, that's your damage mitigation. So I'm going to increase all my damage mitigation by 5%. I didn't really want to focus on just one versus just increasing all of them across the board. My second modification is maintenance, which restores 190 whole health per second, which is actually going to be kind of clutch, especially in some of the fights I'm going to be in. And my last one is craftsman, which is going, well, it wasn't my intended modification, but the one I have equipped is craftsman, which increases the repair amount of repair kits by 11.5%. Now my intended modification, for instead of craftsman, I was going for survivor, but I didn't get that one. I really didn't want to waste all my upgrade parts trying to get it, so I was like, you know what, I'll just rock with the craftsman for now. But for the most part, it's actually worked out quite well, because with the survivor modification, once your whole health gets below 25%, I think you get like maybe 10 or 11% of health recovery back for like 10 seconds once you get below 25. So with craftsman, it technically almost makes up for it, but I'd rather have the survivor equipped, so in case my repair kit is on a cooldown, I still have that perk to get my health back combined with the maintenance. Alright, so let's get into our second layer, which is really where some of this stuff is really going to come together, which is our furniture. So for my furniture choice, with my first slot is, what is this called? The Worm's Breath. I don't want to pronounce that wrong. We're just going to call it Worm's Breath. And the perks of it says triggering shell shot on target increases the reload time of their weapons by 20% for 10 seconds. It also increases the secondary damage of explosive weapons by 20% and increases weapon damage of explosive weapons by 5%. So you're getting a 5% damage increase to an explosive weapon. That's just the raw damage. And then the secondary damage, we're increasing that by 20%. Now for my furniture slot 2, I went with the inverted flag rack. And the perks of it says deals 14% more weapon damage to taunted targets, which we read previously, not with the endure, but how was the name of that? I am so sorry. I don't want to tell y'all wrong. I'd rather make sure I get it right. Provoked. So damage dealt within 250 meters applies taunt charges. Now with my furniture slot 2, like I said, as I was saying, with the inverted flag rack, deals 14% more weapon damage to taunted targets. And it's also going to increase the duration of the taunt charges effect on target by 15%. Now for my furniture slot 3, I went with the Campaigny Spirit Locker, which the benefits of this is going to reduce crew stamina depletion at the start of bracing by 20%, while slowed by flooding, torn sails, or other status effects. So let's say, for example, even though we have the armor equipped with the dark meditation that's going to reduce the chances of us getting those status effects, even if we do get the status effects, our armor is going to reduce the overall duration while bracing by 10%. And this here furniture equipped with it is going to reduce the stamina depletion while we have that status effect, while also reducing the overall duration of that status effect. That's why I paired the Campany Spirit Locker with it. The next benefit of the Campany Spirit Locker is going to increase your brace strength by 15%. And with the provoked, the provoked perk that the battle jump has, which once the target has the target status effects, well, taunted status effects, you're going to get increased brace strength by 150%, and you're going to also get the 25% brace strength recovery. So we're just going to want to add another 15% on top of the 150 that we're already getting from the target having the taunted status effects to them, which will put you at 165 brace strength overall percentage wise. And then so it's going to increase your brace strength to 165. Your brace strength recovery is going to be still at 25%. And then also you're getting that 14% damage increase from the inverted flag rack. And then lastly, for the Campany Spirit Locker, it's going to also increase your armor by another 7%, which is going to add just a little more defense to your overall playstyle. Well, this is what worked for my playstyle. You can tweak it however you like. Now for my furniture slot 4, I went with the accelerated gunner rail smithy, which is going to reduce the reload time by 5% and increase secondary damage of auxiliary weapons by 7% for each weapon quadrant being reloaded. The next one is, while not trimming cells, it's also going to increase weapon damage of auxiliary by 9%. So if you're moving around, like say if you're in a PvP or PvE event, you're still going to maintain that 7%. But if you find yourself where it's best to stay stationary, you get an additional 2% damage increase to your auxiliary. But the main reason I really went for this, the accelerated gun rack smithy, was the increased turn speed by 8%. And I'll explain that the increased turn speed by 8% when I get to the weapons. Now for my furniture slot 5, I went with my standard. Normally I have it in 6, but I had it in 5 this time. It's the Maintenance Forge 1, which is going to restore 1% severe damage per second while out of combat. That is only just in case I get sunk by someone, as I was saying previously, that this season really focused on poison and torpedoes, and with the weapon modifications that were not available previously, from what I've seen, a lot of players are rolling severe damage on their builds and just pretty much stacking on top of the severe with flow weapons and poison and just sending you back to dock. So this is just to provide, I guess, a little bit of a safety net. So let's say they spawn you further away and that other player decides not to try to bully you, you can get your severe damage back without being in combat. Now for our furniture slot 6, I went with the Bridge Lock Furnace, which is going to increase secondary damage dealt by up to 20% the closer the target is. And it's also going to reduce by 2% per 50 meters to target. And if I did my math right, that's a 2% reduction to secondary damage up to 600 meters. But the closer they are, you're going to cap out at an increase of secondary damage of 20%. And if you combine that with the secondary damage that you're getting from the Worm's Breath, that puts you at 40% overall secondary damage. And then lastly, let's see, make sure I got this right. Yeah. So we already explained the increased secondary damage the closer the target is, and a reduction to secondary damage the further the target is away from you, up to, again, if I got my math right, up to 600 meters. It's also going to increase the charge rate of shell shock effect on ships by 5%, and it's also going to increase damage dealt by shell shock status effects by 3%. Now let's get into the sweet stuff, the cherry on top, my weapons of choice. So my weapons of choice for this build is the Frostwell. I be honest with you, I do not know how to pronounce that. I just call it a little shorty explosive. I do not know how to pronounce this one either, but I just call it the Impending Doom. And the last one was also Frostwells. But so for my bow, I went with the Frostwell, and the perk of the Frostwell, or the first perk of the Frostwell, is Countdown. Hits have a 15% chance of inflicting a delayed explosion that deals 2,500 damage in a 65-meter blast radius after 4 seconds. The chance increases to 15% with each target hit, limited to 5 targets at 75% chance. Now the reason I went with the Frostwells on the bow, because let's say, for example, if you're doing a convoy, even if you don't get the countdown perk on the ship that you're going for, that doesn't mean the ship around it won't get the delayed explosion, which technically you can kind of chain them together if you practice at it. Practice always makes better, practice never makes perfect. The Frostwells also do level 2 explosive, adds 20% damage as explosive damage, and a 35-meter blast radius. Now my modifications are rapid reload from our first one. My second modification is blast range, because as I stated previously, with the countdown perk, it tells you at the end the chance increases to 15% with each additional target hit. So by me expanding my blast range, I also increase my chances of hitting multiple targets and getting that countdown perk. And then my last one modification is Death Blow. Not as many people go for this modification since the development of torpedoes and the poison. A lot of people just go for the severity now. But the reason I went for the Death Blow, because if I'm going to have the countdown perk and have a chance of having a delayed explosion, it's really just a countdown to your Death Blow if I can get you below 25%. Now the only counter to Death Blow that I'm aware of, I don't know it all. The only counter to Death Blow is the armor perk I mentioned previously that I have in place of my armor of Craftsman was a Survivor, which once your health gets below 25%, you can counter that with, as I said, in like 10 to like maybe 11% health recovery once you get below 25. That's the only counter I've found to Death Blow, the Death Blow modification. So that's it for my bow. Let's get into my port. And let's see. At some point, I'm gonna get these names right, but it won't be no time soon right now. But this is the little, I want to say little, it is little, but what is this? This is a demi cannon. And the perks of this little explosive demi cannon, impediment bang. Hits have a 3% chance of inflicting a delayed explosion that deals 7,500 damage in a 65-meter radius after 4 seconds. Now the key is for you to get these multiple explosions to, I want to say multiple impending dooms to chain together, is to actually kind of blend your shots together. So we got, I jumped the gun. Let me finish explaining the little short cannon. So you have hits that have a 3% chance to inflict a delayed explosion that deals 7,500 damage in a 65-meter radius after 4 seconds. And the key is may only inflict one delay attack per target, which is fine because we have the frost wheels that may get the countdown perk on multiple targets. But with this perk here, we can focus on actually getting that delayed explosion on the target that we're currently shooting. And these have a combustion level 3 as 30% damage as explosive. Now for me, the main flaw that I saw with these, well, this is with most enemy cannons, was the range. And the ones I have currently only have 285 meter range. So my first modification to kind of make up for that was reach, which increases the range by 14%, just to give me like a little extra range. That way I don't have to wait for the target to get so close to actually do some decent damage to it. Granted, we have the furniture, the breach something, which is going to increase secondary damage the closer the target is, but you don't want nobody getting like right up in your face. So first modification, I went for reach. My second modification, I went for amplified explosive, which is going to increase existing explosive damage by 35.9%. Now the reason I went for the amplified explosive, because if I'm going to get a 3% chance to inflict a delayed explosion that deals 7,500, I did the amplified explosion to help give it a little boost of extra damage, as well as to kind of counter my target's damage mitigation. And again, I rolled death blow because there's nothing worse than like having a delayed explosion and then actually having that death blow follow behind it. So yeah, we ran amplified explosion combined with this furniture, which is going to increase damage dealt by shell shock by 3%. That's also increased secondary damage by 20% combined with the worms bill 40. Yeah, that's pretty decent amount of damage. And lastly, the weak point damage on this is 150%. So pay attention to that too, because these here are pretty deadly on weak points at close range, or at least within the 285 meters of them being on the port side of my ship. Now for my starboard side, you have to mix this up if you really want to change these delayed explosions together. You have to run, I don't want to say you have to run, you can pretty much set it up any way that works better for you. You can see my setup. I have the frost wheels, then I had the little demon cannons on my port side, and it works better for me to have my long guns on my starboard side because my opponents usually start off on my starboard side. So it doesn't matter if they don't have to be close range for me to actually do damage. So then lastly, also to chain the Impending Doom perk, but kind of jumped the gun again. But the main perk of this long gun, I really wish I knew how to pronounce that name, is Impending Doom, which is where I got the name from. It says hits have a 15% chance to inflict a delayed explosion that deals 7,500 damage within 65 meters after 4 seconds. This chance increases to 100% when hitting a weak point. This weapon right here was the main reason I went for the Impending Doom strategy with this build. Now, I stated earlier I'm not really trying to talk your head off or bore you, but with the provoked perk that the battle jump has, it says applying taunt with this ship makes the target vulnerable to 50% increased weak point damage of all sources. Combine that with this long gun, which does weak point damage of 200, Also does piercing level 1. And we get that 7,000 off the Impending Doom. So not only are we doing a lot of weak point damage, we're also adding the Impending Doom damage behind it. And this weapon here also states in the Impending Doom may only inflict one delayed target per may only inflict one delay attack per target. So if you can increase your ability to kind of chain these weapons together, which is why I explained earlier why I went with the accelerated gun rail smithy, which is going to increase my turning speed by 8%. And you may ask yourself, why didn't I go with like something like the secret catch? Because usually my fights, the battle jump don't do very well with acceleration. It kind of makes it stiff when it's turning. So like with the, let's see, where is it? The secret catch is going to increase your turning speed by 16% and also increase your acceleration by 16%. It really balances it out, but I really just wanted to focus on the turning. So that's why I went with the accelerated gun rail smithy. I want to get sidetracked because there's a lot of, I won't say it's a lot of missing, but for the most part, I'm giving you the general rundown. Does it combustion level 2? It also gives you that siege perk, which increases damage destruction by 50%, adds 20% damage as explosive, and you also get piercing level 1, which adds 10% as piercing damage and increases damage to weak points by 50%. So not only are we getting that 50% increase once we apply that, well, we have that chance to get a 50% increase to weak points with the taunt. We're also going to get a delayed explosion, and we're getting piercing. Oh my gosh, what happened? Come on, game. Not in the middle of me doing a video, bro. I do apologize about that. So we're doing pistol level 1, so we're getting the taunt status effect on them, which opens the door for 50% more damage to weak points. With the weapon we have equipped to our starboard side, we're also going to get that delayed explosion chance at 100% once hitting a weak point. And with piercing level 1, adds 10% damage as piercing damage, increasing damage to weak points by 50%. So what I went with for my modifications was sharpen, which is going to add an additional 10% damage as piercing damage, which will bring me to an overall 20% piercing damage, which brings my weak point damage to that 200%. Now my last two for my modifications are pretty much the same as the little demi cannon. If you're gonna go for the Impending Doom, I just refuse to be, how can I say this? I don't want to be one of those players who's applying severe damage to you without having that flood status effect or actually sinking my opponent. So with the death blow, with the Impending Doom coming behind it, with me hitting weak points and getting that also that 50% damage increase, I mean, it's almost satisfying when you hear that explosion go off and you see your opponent go find Nemo. But that's neither here or there. And it also does combustion level 2, which adds 20% as damage as explosive. And I also rolled amplified explosive, which is going to increase explosive damage by 33.5%. And I went with that to counter not only the damage mitigation, but also to get some more damage out of that delayed explosion of 7,500. On top of the furniture I have, I'm going to get a little bit more. So you're going to get, I usually get about 6 to sometimes 7,000 off that delayed explosion. again, that number is not going to be absolute. That 7,500 is not going to be really absolute because you have to worry about the damage mitigations, which is going to lower that number in the first place. But we counter that with the furniture that we have with an overall of 40% secondary damage. Yeah, combined with the worm's breath and the other one, we have a overall 40% damage increase to secondary damage to kind of counter that damage mitigation on top of the amplified explosion. Now for my stern, I also went to frost wheels because again, if you can chain these weapons together and hit weak points, you don't necessarily have to hit weak points. It's just an added bonus. So you really see your opponent's health drop with the benefits of the taunt. Obviously you already know the Frostwell has the countdown perk, explosive level 2. But for my stern, I just wanted to step up the explosive damage just a little bit more. So I rolled combustion for my first weapon modification. I increased the blast range also to help get that countdown perk, even possibly on multiple targets. And also I finished it off with death blow. Again, there's nothing worse than having a impending doom and then having the death blow follow behind it. Now my weapon of choice for my auxiliary, obviously you can really go with any weapon of choice, but I just wanted to make it a little easier on myself without being too complicated, and I went with the crouching tiger. And the perks of it, hitting a target instantly confers taunted status effects. Combine that with the inverted flag, which deals an additional 14% to targets with the taunted stat. That opens the door also to the 50% weak point damage increase, and that's going to increase our overall explosive damage behind it. And then lastly, it's going to add hitting a target instantly confers the taunted status effect. It's got blast, it adds 15% damage as explosive damage in a 50-meter blast range, and it also applies burning level 2, which adds 20% damage as burning. So for my weapon modifications, I went with rapid reload because usually the reload on the auxiliary for the mortar is about 20 seconds. So by adding that rapid reload by almost 10%, that knocked like at least 2 seconds off my reload time for the crouching tiger. Now my second modification, I've obviously amplified explosive to increase that explosive damage. Also from the blast range, so yeah, it's pretty decent. Because you will honestly with amplified explosive on a crouching tiger, you will get that shell shock effect a lot quicker with amplified explosive. Then lastly, for my last weapon modification, I went with the blast range, which is going to increase the blast radius by 16%. So not only you have a chance to hit at least maybe 2 targets with this crouching tiger now with the blast range, not to mention, let's say if you do yours a little bit different with the furniture like the B.K.W.R, which increases the reload and your radius by like 10% and the reload by 7, that's actually a pretty decent combination. So in combination with the execution, I can say you're really just chaining the impending doom perk together, and honestly it's a decent PvP build. It's a pretty balanced PvE build. Again, you can tweak it any way you like, but the main thing you want to pay attention to is what the weapons say with the long gun with the impending doom. May only inflict 1 delay attack per target. So with this long gun and this demi cannon, you have a chance to get that delayed explosion on 1 single target. But with the Frostwell, not only can you get that countdown on that same target, you also have a possibility of getting that countdown on possibly multiple targets as well. So keep that in mind. And honestly, I am satisfied with the damage output. It came out better than what I expected. I did want to kind of switch it up from my usual torpedo style gameplay, which granted you, if you've been watching me from the beginning, my first ship is a brigantine, and I focused on torpedoes with that build. So I'm quite familiar with the torpedoes. I just wanted to give the torpedoes a break. Now, lastly, before I let you go, the next video I will be releasing, it would be, let's see, where there she is. My next video will be this ship here, which is Heaven's Echo, which is the frigate. I'm not too much of a fan of the big ships. I am starting to come around to them a little bit. And again, if you've been watching me for a while, I do try to take a little bit different approach than what most would. I don't mind going against the grain and trying to come up with something different than what's likely to be expected by the developers. I mean, granted, the game, technically any game, is designed to express your creativity, but it's for me, it's more so not how I express it, it's more so how do I execute it. So going against the grain, it does take a little bit longer to kind of come up with something new. But that's pretty much it. I'm gonna wrap it up for this video. Now the Heaven's Echoes is going to be coming out shortly after this one as well. And upon me posting this video, I will be changing my channel name to It's Not Me. And my reason behind that is, how can I say this? I've grown comfortable with not being in control. And what I mean by that is, I've always been spiritually aware, but I don't want to say but, lately those senses have been like enhancing on a pretty decent but rapid pace. And I've come to terms that I'm not in control of anything, so I can't get mad at things I cannot control. With that being said, I've accepted him before and then declined him right after, and then accepted him, then declined. I was treating this energy and this person like he was a genie, and I realized I was wrong for that. And a lot of things that have occurred, to a certain degree, I gave myself authorization when I didn't have authorization to execute XYZ. And now I'm at this point where I can fully acknowledge that I'm not in control, and I have to follow suit for my own salvation. And the person I'm talking about is Jesus Christ. And I'm not trying to really step on nobody's toes, but I say this because where you're at currently is not where you're going. So even if you're in a good place, hopefully you're on your way to a better place. And if you're in a bad place, hopefully you're on the way to a good place. Then you can also follow suit and get to a better place. And through all my research and, conversations and my late night homework sessions and this and that, no other king has risen from the dead to defy the laws that we understand now for my salvation. So with that being said, that's the reason behind the change of my YouTube channel. I realized that a lot of stuff that I give myself credit for was it wasn't just for me. It was given to me by God. So I had to give him the credit and the glory. So going forward, my channel name will be It's Not Me. If that steps on anybody's shoes, it is what it is. But going forward, that's the way it's gonna be. Now, I'm not disregarding anybody. By all means, I hope we can all find that salvation. Hopefully, along my spiritual journey or along your spiritual journey, you know, hopefully our destinations is the same. Our journeys may be different, but our destination is the same, and we can find some type of middle ground in between. But kind of rambling off at the mouth a little bit, but that's gonna wrap it up for this video. I will see you all in the next one. Take it easy. Alright, so I do apologize for the video being so long. I promise you that was not my intentions going forward. I will try to shorten that up. Granted, with the weapon modifications and the extra details in between, I was trying to make sure I didn't leave anything out. But if you made it this far into the video, I thank y'all so much for at least making it this far. And I did forget to mention something before I closed out the video, so I'm adding it to it now. I promise you I don't have ADHD, but Heaven's Echo looks really nice there in the background. But that's neither here nor there. So the things I forgot to mention, let's see. So with the Impending Doom build, again, if you made it through the whole video, again, that was not my intention for the video to be that long. I will be trying to shorten those up. But with the Impending Doom build, you don't necessarily have to apply it just to the battle junk. I really went for the benefits of the weak point damage. But there are two other ships that you can apply this to that I personally would recommend just for my playstyle. You don't have to do them. Again, do it to whatever accommodates your playstyle. But my recommendations, if you're gonna do this build on another ship, I would recommend doing it on the schooner, because the schooner has the perks of Fury, which is going to increase damage to structures by 50% and increase weak point damage by 30% for 10 seconds if you get the Fury perk. Hits have a 20% chance to trigger Fury on itself for 15 seconds, boosting broadside weapon damage by 20%. While active, broadside hits can trigger a 700 damaging explosion every 3 seconds within 100 meter blast radius. So you can also apply this build to the schooner if you so choose to do so. Then lastly is the other perk of the schooner is volatile, which all weapons equipped to broadsides of the ship deal 20% explosive damage and decrease explosive weapon damage reload by 10%. So you can also apply this build to the schooner if you so choose to do so. Then the other ship of choice that I would recommend, again, you don't have to do it. I'm not trying to imply my will upon your free will. Where is it? Nope, not the slope. I do apologize. Is it? Yes, this the B.K.W.R. I need my chain breaker, but I think I said that right. Patty. You get what I'm saying. I'm gonna get those names right. But you can also apply this build to this ship here, which the first perk of it is called Detonate. Explosive hits have a 70% chance of triggering an explosion that deals 1,000 damage within a 125 meter blast radius. If the target is ablaze, an additional explosion will trigger a 100% chance per explosion hit. And it's also going to increase damage to structures by 50% and weapon damage radius by 12. Now the last perk is Siege. At half sails or anchor, it's going to increase weapon damage by 35% and decrease reload time by 15% for explosive weapons. So also keep these two ships in mind. Those are my other two recommendations for this build. Again, I went with the battle jump for the benefit of having that increased weak point damage. But you can also apply this to the schooner or this ship here. Um, I just wanted to reiterate that, just not reiterate, just introduce that. I did forget to include that in the video, but I'm adding it to it now. And again, thank you if you made this far in the video. I appreciate you. Y'all take it easy, and I will see you in the next one.